Okay, here we go, Exodus chapter 20, and I will fast forward our slideshow. I don't know if this slideshow stuff is a blessing or a curse, because I don't know when the first one I did, and now I feel like y'all expect it. I finished working on Sunday school, and I'm like, I got to do the slideshow now. So anyway, but no, it's fine. I'm a visual learner, so anything visual always helps me. Exodus chapter 20. Are you ready? Let's go to verse 17. For the very last of the 10 commandments. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and I don't know if, okay, does your Bible at verse 18, do you see that little mark before the word and? Y'all know what that is, right? Yeah, not everybody knows what that is. Do you also have the mark after verse 22 before that word and? Yeah, does anybody, but not everybody knows. Do y'all know what what those marks are? Well, what's that? No, I don't think so. It's a paragraph division. It's a paragraph division, y'all. Yeah. There you go. Some don't have those marks, but they separate it into paragraphs. Yeah. No, it's same difference is what the kids say these days, right? And so the reason why because I'm into paragraph Bibles. I have a number of paragraph Bibles, not verse by verse, but paragraph. And so that's how. But after Acts 20, there's no more. The best we've ever been able to, that I've ever heard someone suss it out, is after Acts 20, they had to rush the King James to the publisher. I can't remember the guy's name, but they weren't able to finish. So after Acts 20, you won't see any of those marks in your Bible. And so I've got a paragraph Bible I'm looking at, thinking about buying maybe. But after Acts 20, there's no more paragraphs. Every chapter is just one huge long paragraph, right? Because they follow these paragraph markings in there. It didn't mean anything. I was just talking with somebody about that, and they didn't know. So I thought, well, okay. Anyway, here we go. We're at verse 17. Are you ready? Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. All right? So what's the 10th commandment? The 10th commandment is against coveting, right? It's against covetousness, I guess you might say. I'll probably mispronounce that word before we're finished, covetousness. But anyway, it gives us, and it gives us, not all the commandments do this, by the way, but this commandment does something. What does it do? It gives us examples. It gives us examples, right? It gives us examples so you get an example of what coveting is, whether it's your neighbor's house, wife, whatever. It not only says it's against covetousness, but it provides us with examples to help us understand and put it into context. So the first one it gives us is thy neighbor's house, right? For example, in modern English, here's the Chris Cravens version. In modern English, it'd be like if we were to say, man, my next door neighbor sure has a lot of nice stuff. Man, I wish I had. Or man, I just went and visited my friend, and then I have to drive back. I'm tired of living in this dump of a neighborhood that we live in, right? Why can't we have a nice house and that kind of stuff? My third son, Nathan, they have a house that costs more than ours do, and he's just starting out in life. I'm like, how do you do that, right? I thought that life was, you start out in life, you don't have much money, you scrimp and save, and then later on down the line, if you can afford one, you buy a house. He's just starting out, just graduated from college, and I'm like, anyway, hey, more power to you. If you can do it, son, that's fine. But anyway, so that would be kind of like anything that your neighbor has that you like, and then you look at your stuff and you say, well, my stuff's not nearly as good, right? And then notice the next thing it says, no, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. So if I would put it in modern, Chris Craven's version, modern English, I would say something like, you see a woman on the street. If I'm a man, of course, so I'm more attracted to females. I'm not that way attracted to men at all. That's a sin. That's sodomy. But anyway, or if I see a woman on TV, I'm like, man, I wish my wife looked like that. That's what this is saying. That's a sin. That's a violation of the 10th commandment, right? Okay, let's do the women. Are you ready? All right. Maybe you're a woman and you're married to a dude and you're like, man. Or you see another guy on TV because you're watching the Hallmark Channel during Christmas, right? Or whatever. right? Why isn't my husband as thoughtful or as communicative or caring as this other guy at work? He seems really caring, and he told me he bought his wife roses for no reason last week, and that's a violation of the 10th commandment, y'all. Why isn't my husband as communicative or thoughtful and caring? And my answer to that is, you should have chose better. What can I say? Why? Okay, let's be honest. You females, you know who we are. You know who we are, and if you have, which all of you do, if you have intelligence, you know that this fantasy out there that I'll marry him and change him, you know that's just a fantasy. You know you're not going to change, guys. I'm almost 60 years old, and I act like I'm a 17-year-old teenager sometimes, saying goofy stuff or whatever. When my sons and I get together, we do goofy stuff. Although the funniest thing we ever did over Thanksgiving is when we waterboarded each other. I'm going to get T-shirts like Cravens family reunion and have somebody being waterboarded. We thought it was great fun that we waterboarded each other, and I thought it was really awesome because I lasted longer than all my 3 sons. So, you never want your sons to defeat you in anything, right? Even though you know it's going to happen, whatever, it's fine. But anyway, why isn't my husband as thoughtful as this guy at work or this guy on TV on the Hallmark Channel? Why is my husband as caring? Why doesn't my husband communicate with me? He never communicates, right? All right. Now, I'm saying just because your husband doesn't communicate, you're not committing sin, wanting him to communicate more. You're committing sin if you look at some other dude and say, why can't my husband be more like him? I think that's what this means when it says, and you can disagree with me, I'm fine with that, when it says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. I think that's what that implies. Notice what else it says, manservant, maidservant, ox, things. How about that? You shouldn't covet your neighbor's things, right? Now, my neighbor doesn't have an ox, right? Or I'm not going to make a joke of that. This is church. But anyway, so if I put it in modern Chris Cravens version English, I would say, our car's a piece of junk. Man, our neighbor got a new car. Our car's a piece of junk, right? I remember when I was like my son Jared, I remember when I was struggling and a young kid, all I could afford were used tires. That's all I bought from our cars were used tires. That's what you do when you don't have money, right? And so I'm 60 years old. Well, I don't buy used tires anymore. I was able to stop doing that 20 some odd years ago where I felt like we finally had enough money I can buy new tires now. It was a big day. So anyway, but at the time, I could have looked at my neighbor and like, man, he's got money for these new tires and I'm still having to buy used tires, right? What's up with that, right? And when you buy used tires, you always have tire problems and you always have blowouts and you always have steel coming through. So anyway, what about, I hate my job? What about that? I'm not saying you have to like your job, but you should probably recognize your job as a gift or a blessing from God. Should you not? If you don't want to attach any great spiritual thing, I'm not going to get Pentecostal on you because I'm not Pentecostal. There's a good down the road probably if you want. But I'm not going to say, oh, this is the job that God wanted me to have and this is the job that I was meant to. Whatever, maybe that's true, maybe it's not. That's up to you. But I do know if I have a job that's a blessing and a gift from God, I'm not going to get all overly spiritual about it, but I do know it's a blessing and gift from God because even if I don't go all spiritual about it, I can say, well, God has allowed me to provide food for my family, rent so we can have a roof over our heads and transportation. And so my job is a blessing. But I look at someone else's job that they have, and I'm like, man, that person's earning twice as much as I am, and they're probably not working half as hard as I am, and I'm just as intelligent as they are. I'm just as hardworking as they are. I'm just as good looking as that guy, right? I say that all the time. But anyway, my job stinks. I caught myself doing this the other day. I caught myself doing this. I'm not saying it was right. I'm telling off on myself. People taking vacations. Somebody recently at our school took a vacation down to Mexico or whatever. I'm like, wow, we're hoping that maybe we can get away 1 or 2 nights and go somewhere in Central Texas, and that's to us a big vacation. And these people are going down to Mexico and all of that, right? And it wouldn't even cost us as much because they're probably blowing a lot of money on booze, which we wouldn't be. So, but still, we can't afford it. But you know what? That's wrong. I think that was a violation of the 10 Commandments. Now, I caught myself doing it, luckily, and I'm like, that's not right. And so I guess I stopped myself anyway. But other people go on nice vacations. Why can't we? Or when my sons were growing up, they probably thought other people have air conditioning cars. Why can't we? because my sons are in the back, three boys crammed into the back seat of a car, and it was probably that Cordoba, like Ricardo Montalban, the Chrysler Cordoba, and it had those seats that stick to you in the summer, right? And so my sons are crammed back there. I'm sure they're thinking, why can't we have AC? All our friends have cars with air conditioning and we don't. And why does Dad park half a mile away to the store? Well, Dad found a tree and we don't want to get hot boxed when we come back in the car. So I'm parking under the tree so we can get some shade. We're going to have to walk a half a mile to Walmart, but when you come back, you're going to feel a lot better about things, believe me, or whatever. And so, I've never done this one, but I wrote this one down because I was just thinking of examples. I've never had to say this, but have you ever said this? I wish I was as smart or good looking as that person is. I've never had to worry about that. You know, they probably looked at me and thought that, but I've never had to worry about that. But anyway, I'm just saying the Lord has given us examples here for a reason. Not for no reason. The Lord has given us examples. What do you mean covet something that belongs to your neighbor? Well, that's what I believe, what we're talking about here. That's what we mean. So there's nothing wrong with noticing what other people have, but how many of us notice what someone else has, something new or something good or whatever, and then we say, well, praise the Lord that person has a new car. That's a blessing. I'm sure that's a blessing for them. You know, how many times do we do that as opposed to how many times we see their new car and like, man, must be nice. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you're more spiritual than I am, but sometimes I fall into that trap, right? There's nothing noticing what other people have, but when we do, we should thank the Lord for them. Or how many of us notice what other people have and think, or say to them, man, the Lord's really blessed you with a new car, hasn't he? We don't. We get selfish about it, right? Or we get covetous about it, right? Instead, we notice and then we stop being thankful. We see what they have, and guess what happens? We stop being thankful for what God's given us. That rundown piece of junk car, God gave. So we had that Chrysler Cordoba. That was given to us. When we're a struggling family. I'm one dude working 2 jobs trying to provide for my family so my wife can stay home and take care of the kids. And that Chrysler was given to us by my stepdad. What am I going to do? Turn my nose up at it? But when someone gets a new car, I'm looking at my Chrysler Cordoba and I'm thinking, man, why don't I have something like that? This is a piece of... So what happens is when we look at what someone else has and we think, wow, we wish we could have that, instantly what happens is we become dissatisfied with what God's given us over here. And if we're dissatisfied with what God's given us, that's a sin. I don't care if it's in the spiritual realm or the material, physical realm or whatever. If God's given you something and you're not thankful for it, then it's a sin, right? Every day I wake up and I'm thankful for my good looks and my youth and no, I'm kidding. But anyway, that's the idea, right? We stop being thankful for what God's given us. That is where part of the sin of this 10 Commandment lies, right? Today, Americans seem to believe that the opposite of what Jesus Christ taught. In Luke 12, Christ said that a person's life does not, I quote, consist in the abundance of things which he possesseth. Your life is not all the stuff that you possess or own, but if you asked or looked at most Americans' lives, you would see that they don't believe that at all. Because the idea is to possess or acquire as much stuff as you can. And you say, well, Brother Chris, yeah, those rich people. No. I see people living in trailers that acquire as much stuff as they can. As many nice cars as they can or as much junk as they can. But acquiring stuff and coveting stuff is not just a rich person's disease or a middle-class person's disease. I think it cuts across all specters, right? Most Americans believe life does consist in the abundance of their possessions and they want as much as they can. I read a quote the other day by Shaquille O'Neal, and he was telling some other athlete, he said, you should be thankful for your family. And he has this other athlete, I don't know who it was. I don't watch pro sports anymore. I stopped watching it mostly, and then when they did the kneeling, I'm like, I'm out. I'm done. So anyway, but Shaquille O'Neal was telling this guy, you should enjoy your family. He said, I've got a 11,000 square foot mansion, and I'm living there all by myself. So that's the idea. We think life consists in the abundance of our possessions, but it doesn't, right? We're always spending and consuming and acquiring possessions, but we are never satisfied. I've experienced this in my own life recently. I've really been on a binge, if you would, of Bible buying. I'm so fascinated with different kinds of King James Bibles, paragraph, single column verse by verse, single column paragraph, double column verse by verse, which is most double columns, double column paragraph, which is rare but still there. And I've told myself, oh, hold on. Where does this stop? Because I know other people that have Bible, and I'm thinking, at what point do you become a Bible collector instead of just a Bible studier, reader, and meditator, right? I don't want to be a Bible collector. I want to be a Bible reader, studier, and meditator. By the way, I said this to Benjamin this morning. I've gotten into this thing lately, and I just love it. I've gotten into where I will take, not this Bible, it's another Bible sitting over there. It's a paragraph Bible, 8.75 font, and I'll tell you the rest later. But anyway, I can hold it in one hand, and we live out in the woods, and our road that goes to if you want to call it a road, that goes to the real road is a half a mile. So I have a half a mile of walking through the woods and through pasture. And so I've taken lately of just walking around with my Bible, and usually in the book of Psalms, and just reading my Bible as I walk. I found that that's just a pleasant, usually I'm sitting when I'm reading. I'm like, that's a pleasant experience. I don't know if you've ever tried that. You know what else you should try? I know I'm going off the subject. Try, especially in the book of Psalms. You know, the King James Bible was, part of the reason why it was made was to be read aloud, right? That's why the English is so, anyway. Have you ever read the Bible out loud, especially the book of Psalms? Read it out loud to yourself. I've been having a good time with it. Anyway, that's beside the subject. I don't want to be a Bible collector. I want to be a Bible studier and reader and a faithful follower of Scripture, right? But we're always consuming, no matter who we are. It seems like we're never satisfied. I just got this last Bible. I'm like, I think I'm good now. But I know what's going to happen. You do too. What's going to happen? I'm going to see something else I've never seen before. What? I saw a paragraph Bible the other day. It's a true paragraph King James Bible. It doesn't even have the number markings on there. So it's like a book. You're reading a book. In the Old Testament, that works really, really good. The New Testament, but anyway. So I know that's what's going to happen unless I just stop and say, you know what? I need to stop giving in to my covetousness or my lust for more stuff. And, because there's always going to be something more you want. And then part of my heart has told myself, oh, it's a Bible, so it's fine. No, it's not. Whatever you're trying to covet or get more of necessarily is not necessarily always a good thing, right? We do this. Why do we do this? Why do we always want more? It's because our hearts are sinful, y'all. Our hearts are full of sinful desires. Instead of being satisfied with what we have, we crave something else. Instead of being content, we covet. I'll say that again, the two C words. Instead of being content, we covet. Now, in its extreme form today, it comes to guys my age when they look at their wife and they're thinking, I could use a younger version. And so they have a midlife crisis and they divorce their wife of 20 some odd years or more, and the kids who have gone off and left probably by this time, but still. And so I need a younger version, I've fallen out of love with my wife or whatever they say like that. That's the extreme form, but don't you see that today all around? It's sad, right? And now even women are doing it. I've got a quote by Alistair Begg. He said this: "Our society thrives on materialism, cashing in on the sin of covetousness. Its goal is to create within our hearts a longing for things that we do not have." That's the definition of advertising. Not only a longing, but also an attitude of need and entitlement. I don't just want this. I don't just want that new Bible. I need that new Bible. If I don't have that new Bible, none of these other Bibles are going to mean as much to me. I got to have that. Not only, I like what he said, because don't you see in our society today, it's a longing for things we don't have, right? And then it leads to the thought that we need that thing that we don't have. And then the next step is we're entitled to those things we don't have. Do we not live in an entitlement culture today? You're not awake if you don't understand that we are living in an entitlement culture. I'm entitled to this, I'm entitled to that, and I better get it, and the government better give it to me or else, right? That's where entitlement comes from. It comes from a longing for things we don't have in violation of the 10th commandment because of our sinful heart, It's a longing for things we don't have in violation of the 10th commandment because of our sinful heart, and that longing leads to need. I need it, and then that need leads to I'm entitled to it. We're going down that road. I've got a good quote. I don't have it here. That it's a Roman historian, a Greek historian. That sometimes I'll give this to my history class or my economics when I used to teach economics. And the guy basically said this. He said, a democracy is not going to last very long. That's our form of government, democracy. Actually, we're a democratic republic. So democracy is not going to last very long. He said, I've studied history. Democracy don't last. And he explains why. He said, democracy will last for a little while until people realize that they can vote for stuff. Once people realize, I can vote for somebody and they'll give me free stuff, then guess what happens? He called it the treasury, back in Roman days. Then what happens is the city treasury starts to be a place where everything is given to people, in which case the country goes economically bankrupt, in which case totalitarianism rises, and then you go from democracy back into slavery. I'm like, that sounds right. That sounds what many countries have gone through, or nations or civilizations have gone through. We live in an entitlement society. The Ten Commandments against that. So if we follow the Ten Commandment, we wouldn't have an entitlement society today. This commandment was made to keep us This commandment was made primarily, to put it in context, for Israel, to keep Israel separate and different from all the other nations. Because one of the things about Israel is God wanted them to be separate. All those laws and rules that you read, a lot of those, for the Israelites on what day they should do this and what animals they should eat and what things they should not eat, what fabrics they should wear and not wear. All those things were given for many reasons, but the main thing underlying it all is God wanted Israel to be different and separate from all the other nations. Israel could never do it, could they? They never could. But that's why God gave those. And that's why God gives this commandment to Israel, to keep them separate. Why? Because the other nations are in greed and materialism, and they want this and they want that. But Israel's different. Why is Israel different? Israel has a God who has told them, I will give you everything you need. Everything you need, I will provide. I will even give you a land. And it wasn't owned by any Palestinians. I will give you a land even. I'll give you a land and everything you need. And then there's the grapes of Eshcol also there on the land. And who could say no to that? Well, the Israelites. But anyway, and us, right? If Israel could recognize that everything they had was from God, then they would be less inclined to covet. They would be less inclined to want to copy the nations around them or want what those nations had. That was a way of keeping Israel separate. Well, let's apply it to us. Don't you think that's also true for us today? To keep us separate from the world? To help us not to want what our neighbor has? Why? I don't need to want what my neighbor has. God's promised me that I will have all things through Christ, right? That whatever we need, God will provide. Not what we want, but what we need, right? There's 2 or 3 other King James Bibles. If I had those, I wouldn't want any other Bible, right? That's what I want to tell myself, right? But God knows better than I do. And God hasn't chosen to make me a millionaire. Has God chosen to make y'all a millionaire? I didn't think so. The way some of y'all dress, I know that he has not chosen. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking, guys. I'm not making fun. This is the one suit that I've had for about a year, and before that, I have the one suit that I had for about 15 years. So I'm not trying to make fun of anybody. But anyway, if Israel realized everything they had was from God, they'd be less likely to want to covet what was not theirs and copy other nations. If we realize that same thing, that'll also be true for us, right? Israel should have also realized that if another nation had good things, then maybe that was God's grace. Doesn't the Bible say that the rain falls on the just and the who else? The unjust, right? God has given, the theologians have a fancy name for it, and they call it common grace. God has his grace that is bestowed on everybody, the rain on the just and the unjust, right? So if Israel sees that other nations have something good, Israel should have just said, well, God's blessed them. Hallelujah. God's blessed them and given these riches to them. We don't have riches, but God's also promised to bless us too. So why should we worry about their riches, right? The same thing is true for us today as well. If God has blessed me, I should be happy with what God has blessed somebody else. Now, God has blessed them with more money, good looks, or whatever, or health. But whatever, I should thank the Lord that they have that. Because if I get covetousness, then I'm going to be unthankful for what I do have. And that is a big sin, right? So anyway, let's go on to the next part. I'm sorry. That was the introduction, y'all. There we go. I'm sorry that lasted kind of long. I'm sorry. Let's go to, I don't have a definition. I'm in a definition. Here we go. The verb translated covet means to desire. The 10th commandment is not against desiring or having feelings. I desired my wife and I asked her to marry me, and for some stupid reason she said yes. Stupid on her part, not on my part. I want to make that clear, right? So there's nothing wrong with desiring and having feelings for things, right? The problem is not that we desire things. The problem is we desire the wrong things, all right? If I was perfect and upright and sinless, then all my desires would be what? Perfect, and all my desires would be oriented towards God. Are any of us perfect and sinless? No. The way I've heard it said in fancy theologian books, our desires are disordered. Our desires are not in the right order, and that's because of the entrance of sin. That our desires are disordered, our loves are disordered, right? So there's nothing wrong with desiring. The problem is we desire the wrong things because we're sinful creatures. We desire the wrong. I'm not saying we always desire the wrong thing. When I'm walking through the woods reading my Bible, I'm desiring a good thing and I'm having a good time. But let's just be honest. Throughout our day, there's multitudes of things that we desire that have nothing to do with glorifying God, right? So it's not the desire itself, right? It's that we're sinful and our desires are disordered, right? We desire, or how about this? We can desire good things, but we can desire them in the wrong way. Can I say that again? We can desire good things. We can desire good things. Let's use my example. I'm using myself again. Bibles, right? If I desire a Bible, I don't think that's a wrong thing. That's God's word, right? If I just, like, I've already had this happen once. I got a Bible and I'm like, oh, this is a pretty cool Bible. I thought I'd like it. Didn't really like it. I gave it away, all right? So to another Christian who's using it. So I'm not desiring something bad, but here's my point. We can, as Christians, desire good things in the wrong way. Understand that? We can desire good things in the wrong way, and that leads to so many things in life that, and not only just physically, but also spiritually. We can desire spiritual things in the wrong way. I really want to be closer to God. I really want to be closer to God. I really want to be closer to God, so I'll speak in tongues. That'll get me closer to God. Is it a wrong desire to want to be close to God? No. I said it 3 times already. I'll say it a 4th. It is a wrong thing to desire right things in the wrong way or the wrong manner. I want many, many people to be saved. I'm not going to pull them by the hair and dunk them under the baptistry and say, you're saved. Now, is desiring people to be saved a wrong thing? No. Is my example of dragging them by the hair and bringing them down here and dunking them or putting in the back of the bus and no, that's the wrong, right? So the desire for salvation is not wrong. We can desire good things in the wrong way. We have to be very careful. It's not that we desire bad things, but also we can desire good things. Let me read you a quote. I've got to stop because the bell's fixing to ring. By Joel Beek, I think, said this: sinful coveting is not the desire for a wife or food or housing or other legitimate blessings. It is a proud jealousy that claims what rightfully belongs to someone else, leading to inward anger, hatred, and then ultimately leading to outward theft and violence. Is that not what's happening in our cities today with all the theft and violence that's occurring? Right? It's that covetousness, right? I'll finish. Coveting is a rebellion against the God who has forbidden us to have certain relationships. He has forbidden us to have certain possessions, as when his providence puts them in the rightful possession of someone else, or his law prohibits them to us, right? So coveting is a rebellion. It's open rebellion against God is what it is, right? To covet is to crave or yearn for something that belongs to someone else. When we set our hearts on anything not rightfully ours, or an ungoverned selfish desire for something, that's the definition. Let's finish it off. Colossians 3. Turn to Colossians 3. And the introduction took a while. I'm sorry. But I think it's an important issue today. And I think Christians, well, all of these commandments, but I think it's something that we have to be careful. We live in a covetous society, and we live in a materialistic society, so we are going to be influenced and infected by that if we're not careful, right? We're going to be influenced. That's why I have a Sunday school lesson, I think I've done it, called Jesus Will Save You from the American Dream. right? Everybody's like, oh, the American dream. I didn't come up with this, but I enlarged on it. But my thought is Jesus will save you from the American dream. If you're lucky, right? If you're not lucky, you're caught up in the American dream, new house, new car, vacation in Colorado, snow skiing or whatever. That's the American dream, right? Good benefits on my job, this and that, the other. That's the American dream. The American dream is all based around selfish materialism. The good news is Jesus will save you from the American dream. Colossians 3 verse 5, let's read it. Which in other ages was not made known unto the sons of men. I don't have the right. I'm sorry, let me find the right one. Colossians 3:5. Well, let me try 5:3. Yeah, it's 5:3. So anyway, it's called, what is that called when you mix up stuff? Yeah, it's called dyslexia. I don't have it, but that's my excuse for this. Colossians 5:3. Are you ready? But fornication and all uncleanness or... Oh, I'm reading in Ephesians. Hold on. No, but that's a good verse. Can I just read it out loud to you? Ephesians 5:3. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not be once named among you as becometh saints. So yeah, that's what I meant. No, but let's go to Colossians anyway. Let's go to Colossians. How did I get that so wrong? That's crazy. So Colossians 3:5 should be where we need to be. Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth, fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil, concupiscence, I never can say that word, and covetousness, which is what? Idolatry, right? Coveting is envious, and it goes back to the garden. Didn't Eve see that the tree was good, right? And the fruit looked really, really good, and she wanted it. God had already given them, right? But they wanted the one thing that God said, you should not eat of that tree. That is the height. Covetousness goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden, does it not? Right? Paul points out here that covetousness is a form of idolatry. Why is covetousness a form of idolatry? Covetousness is a form of idolatry because it puts something else in the place of God. If you put something else in the place of God, you're an idolater. Christians can be guilty of idolatry. We can be. Now, if you're idolatry your whole life, then I got to worry about you. But we can be caught up in idolatry if we're not careful, right? Like I could be caught up in the idolatry of, I'm going to have as many King James Bibles as I can. I need to buy this one, and there's a new one out, I'm going to buy that one, all right? So, and then it's like, well, I'm idolizing the Bible when I should be reading and studying and memorizing the Bible, right? We can be, once again, you can want good things in the wrong way, and it's still a sin in violation of the Ten Commandments. I got to close now. Yes, why did he say here that covetousness, which is idolatry? Because anytime you put your affections or your yearning or your longing for something that takes the place of God, that's idolatry, pure and simple. All right, I got a lot more, but we don't got time.